look at that stuff. You know where to go for that. All right, so now you know a little bit about searching for colleges and kind of making your list and how to classify your list. What's going to make up your college application? What are you working on come August of your senior year? That's usually when the applications open, unless you are wanting to do one of the service academies, and that's a little bit before then, okay? But everybody else, it's, August, usually around November 1st. So, the elements of your college application are going to be your high school transcript, which will include test scores, recommendations, essays, extracurricular activities, and additional supplemental materials. And like I said, everything you're doing now from 9th to 11th grade, that's what's really counting here. That's what's gonna, your application is gonna consist of, because you're sending off that transcript at the end, or at the beginning of your senior year. They don't have your senior year stuff. They can only base it on your GPA from then, and and everything, all your classes are on that transcript. Now that doesn't mean stop working your senior year, because they want to know what classes you're taking, what you're doing your senior year. But it is to say that it's very important, 9th, 10th, and 11th, because that essentially is what is building your college application. So first thing, transcript. So a transcript is viewed in the light of what is called our class profile. It's a school profile that we send to the schools that request it, that you're applying to, and it has information about your class, your graduating class, because they're trying to figure out they're not trying to figure out how you compare with the kids at Summit, because you didn't have the same opportunities the kids at Summit had. How did you compare with the kids in your graduating class that had the same opportunities? How did you take advantage of those? So it lists, they're out GPAs and where those percentages fall, ACT scores. We list all the advanced classes that you had access to, and even went, and a couple of years ago, started adding how many of your classmates took those classes. So that's very insightful. For instance, if you're wanting to be pre-med, and like this past graduating class, and on your transcript showed AP Chem, and only 6 of your other seniors took that class, that's impressive. That shows that you went that extra mile. And then it usually has grading scale and some other things for them to interpret. So your transcript, in light of the class profile, shows what classes did you choose? What were your grades in those classes? Did you take challenging classes and make A, B's, and even some C's if it's the most challenging class? They're not gonna hold that against you. If you make an A in regular English, good for you. That's not gonna do much for them. But if you made an A in a dual enrollment English class or an AP English class, all right, now you're talking, okay? And then of course on our transcripts we put, that's a graduation requirement I'll talk about here in a second. We put the ACT scores. And the transcript they receive, once again, is 9th through 11th grade. Do you have any questions about transcripts?
You can access the transcript under your student view, or I believe the parent view as well. But when you go into the course history tab, there is a button. You have to turn those and toggle those to on. And there is a button that'll say like unofficial transcript. Sometimes you have to click it a few times, and it'll say like it's building the document, but it does work and it should pull up your transcript. Now, 9th graders that are in here, you won't have, I know most people are juniors in here, but 9th graders, you won't have a transcript yet because we haven't any final semester averages, but otherwise you should have a transcript in there that you're able to pull up. So, and it rank sometimes it's included, it may be included depending on what grade you're in. Right now I think juniors might have it on there, the others don't have it listed yet. So, and that is approximate because there are some other factors we have to clean up before anything is posted in February of senior year.
That's kind of like what I'm going into research, and then so as far as like, maybe you guys are gonna talk about this later, well, maybe you can, but I wonder, like, how do you weight like the difference between an A and an AP class compared to an A and like a regular class? Like, does that show up on their transcript and show up in colleges to be able to see that there's a difference?
Yes, and so what we are considered, so the question was basically about taking honors and AP classes, and are those weighted differently? Can colleges see that? So it does appear on the transcript as honors, AP, it should be identified that way. And then also, there's, with ours, our county policy, it's more of an internal weighting, so, or not, I don't even want to call it a weighting, but internal points that are added. So those are added to the student's final average, the 5 points for an AP class, 3 points for an honors. And then on our school profile, so if a student applies, for example, through Common App, which is very common if you're applying through to several schools. So the student applies through there, we upload this so they can see, okay, they're saying unweighted GPA, but I know 5 points, this is showing that the student earned a 98 in this class, and so that the 5 points were added, so they still perform very well in the class. So, but we in Maury County do unweighted GPA, and so that is really just to kind of keep things less complicated as far as your HOPE GPA, so that way you know if you're HOPE eligible, which is scholarship. We'll talk, yeah, well, a scholarship we'll talk about later. That, but anyway, so yes, it is on there.
Yeah, so they'll look, you're right. They look at this document and they can see what types of classes that we had offered. So if they, on the student's transcript, it says, whatever, maybe they're applying to do a math or a science program. On their transcript, it shows that their senior year, they took a class called Bridge Math. Well, that's not considered in the honors course. What were the other ones? And yeah, they do look, oh, you got an A in Bridge Math. You leave the interpretation up for the college and how they feel about that, basically. But when they're comparing 50,000 applications, you know, there's certain things that, you know, help put them in piles and make their process a lot. And one of those things is getting down to the nitty-gritty of, did that student take the most rigorous courses that challenged him? And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to take every single one. Maybe you're like, you know, I absolutely know I want to be a lawyer one day. I want to go to law school because I actually have a student that's just about to go to law school. And by his junior and senior, he was done with the AP Sciences. You know, he was just, I'm not doing that, and that was okay for him. He went and he dual enrolled for some classes because he knew those classes were going to transfer. He did what was unique and best for him, and which paid dividends. It's just really, so like I said, it's very personal because it, or individuals is a better word, because it really depends, where are you going to go, where do you want to go, and who are you kind of being compared with, okay?
And on that note, that's where I was, when I kind of lost my train of thought earlier. They're again looking at, we are unweighted, so they're not comparing our students 3.4 with somebody in a school that does a weighting.
9.73,
you know,
something crazy.
Those are not,
No.
those are apples and oranges. And
Yeah.
they know that because they ask those questions. Even if we don't upload this on the application, they ask those things. So,
Yeah. And
that
many,
they look
yeah.
at, what are you doing with the opportunities you have?
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of schools will strip down a GPA that they get, and they're looking at core classes. So, if, you know, kid took, you know, had an extra A in PE every year, that's good. That definitely helps your GPA, but sometimes they're recalculating it anyway. And you're just gonna have to find that out on a school-to-school individual basis.
Those are great questions when you go to visit the schools.
Yeah.
After
Oh,
you
yeah.
narrow them down, if it's, you know, if you're the one kind of being more selective.
All right, and so, a little bit about ACT. So it's a graduation requirement in the state of Tennessee. You are going to take this, to be able to graduate, you've got to take the test, all right? We offer the test in the fall, in the spring of the student's junior year, and then in the fall of their senior year on a school day where the state of Tennessee pays for the test. Doesn't mean you can't go and take the test on your own any Saturday. You just got to create an account, sign up, and go take the test. Now, we definitely advise that if you are going, it would be really smart to start this before your free test, the spring of your junior year, because I can tell you, there's so many kids that'll come in and go, well, I just went in cold. I didn't prepare, I didn't know anything about it, I was just gonna see how I did. And that's okay, but if you're gonna do that, you wanna go in cold like 6 months before then, so that you can kind of have goals. If you need a certain school score for a certain school that you found in your research that you're looking at, then you can kind of know if you need to take that test multiple times to get that score that you're looking
If
for.
you're wanting to dual enroll, maybe for your English
Yes.
classes, to substitute junior. A lot of juniors take both English classes, like the comp classes, and having that ACT score does help expedite that dual enrollment process and eliminate some confusion. So
Yes,
if
so-
you take it before that spring of junior year,
Then
it's recommended.
yes, absolutely. So state universities base their merit-based scholarships on these ACT scores, which we'll talk about in a second. Many, but not all selective schools are what's called test optional, where you don't have to submit your score if you don't like it. All right, so those schools on all the selected list, let's say you get a score and it wasn't your best or whatever, you can still apply to that school, but you're applying as test optional, where you don't want to show them your score at all. And that they tell you that they don't count that against you in any way. They're just looking for something else in your application that's remarkable about you, that shows that you have something that you want to offer there at that institution. You have another reason why to get accepted. Usually what this ACT indicates to them, your score, is that you're ready to do their work, that you can meet the challenge of that work. So if you're applying test optional to one of those schools, then you probably need the AP dual enrollment classes to back it up, because then you have that evidence that you can do work at that higher level, because that's really what they're looking for with the ACT score. Now, if you can get a 30 plus, that's evidence to those schools that you can hang there, you can do it, and we want to encourage you to always submit. Most of them you're going to find, like as you get into the common data set, like this is from UPenn. If you look, most of the students who submitted about 75% of the students submitted their, 71 submitted the scores, and 75% of those scored a super score of about 35. So it tells you kind of the range down there. And then as you can see, 24 to 29, there was still 1%. Those kids that submitted those scores that were lower, more than likely they had to, because they were getting athletic scholarships or something like that, generally is how that applies. But this kind of gives you a frame of reference that you want to show, hey, I can do this. So even if you're not at that crazy range that some of these schools, but you're still 30, that's a good range for our school, because on our school report, we show that, hey, 1%, I think last year it was 2% of students scored a 30, but you, as a student at Spring Hill High School that scored in that range, you are exceptional at our school. And then definitely prep, do some prep. There's all kinds of things I won't even go into, but if you find that you are just a few points from a certain scholarship that you need, or wanting to kind of be in that range for a selective school, then come to us and we'll kind of try to steer you in that direction. We've had students be pretty successful in certain prep. Any ACT questions? All right, next part of the application is your recommendations. And I put some things on the slide that basically all I'm going to say about recommendations is right now, your recommendations are being written. Your attitude, your performance, your grit, all the things of your character, how you get along with your classmates, how you interact with others, all of that is being taken a mental note now by hopefully that one or two teachers that really, really knows you. It can give insight to you as a student that you're going to ask for them to write your recommendation come the summer before your senior year. So if you know, hey, Dr. Dodson, I pretty much know I'm gonna ask you to, would you mind writing a recommendation for me? You always wanna, those of you who are juniors, be thinking about that now and ask the teacher before the end of the school year, because when school starts, And you know how chaotic the first month of school is, and your applications are due. And so that's just one of those things you want to make sure the teacher is aware of, that they're going to ask, and then they can start really come up with some good stuff. And then, of course, your counselor will be submitting all of your, your documents, your transcript, a school profile, and be writing recommendations as well. So get to know us. All right.
And if you are wanting, to go, whether it is a more selective school or you're like, I just want to go to a state school, let us know now so we can work with you on, setting you up for success so that you're not saying coulda, woulda, shoulda, come fall senior year.
Yeah, and those recommendations, even if they're not for your college, because some state schools won't require a recommendation at all. I saw that quite a bit this year. But when scholarship time comes up, because we'll talk about how you're going to hopefully get most of your college for public schools paid for, you're going to need those recommendations for all of your scholarship applications, okay? All right, so let's move it on. Essays. I cannot stress the importance of your college essays. This is going to be a huge requirement for whether you're going to apply to a selective school or you're going to apply for scholarships or to get into selective programs at public schools. Essays are super important. If you feel like you don't have the best writing skills, that's where you need to be reaching out to your English teachers now. Going online, getting some writing tips, practicing your writing, doing some online courses if you need more. But there's so much information about college essays out there that it's another thing that's just definitely a market, right? And there's so much information. But essentially, essays can be kind of narrowed down to a person. Usually they'll want you to write a personal statement, which is kind of comes from the Common App essays. Those are published year after year, so you'll know going in, like this was this last year's, and let me tell you, it's very similar to all the previous years. They don't really change that much. So you know now, this is something for you to start thinking about now, because the last thing you want to do is the first week of your senior year go, oh, I started writing my essays. Because we were just sitting with several of our students last week, 2 days before these things are due, editing, going over it. So start thinking about, finding out what essays are going to be required and start working on those concepts. Who you are as a person, how have you changed, what are some challenges that you have faced, how have you overcome things in your life, what is important to you, what are you interested in? Another essay is the why us. That's very common. Why do you want to come to Northwestern? Think about those things and have that stuff kind of laid out, outlined out. A lot of students start with outlines and jot things down so that when crunch time comes, you feel like you're ready to take it to your English teacher. Hey, edit this for me, bring it to us. Look at this. I met with a friend of mine's daughter, doesn't go to this school. And, well, she sent me her essay. She's applying to get into the nursing program at UTK. She sent me her essay. I said, can you just come to the house because I can't edit on my phone. She came to my house and I said, if you are turning this in for Comp 1010, your dual enrollment English class, or even for a high school, you would get an A+. But you didn't answer the question they were asking you. This doesn't stand out for who you as a person. It doesn't tell them why they need to pick you. So it's super important. The point of that was, and this was like 1 week before it was due. Great writer. Her obstacle was that she didn't have anybody that was reading it discerningly. Like even, you could have your parent read it, but you could have a friend read it, and that's good. It can kind of help, catch any little mistakes like that. But you really need somebody who's gonna maybe not even know you as well. Like last year I took my daughter down to a band teacher and said, because she didn't know her, said, there you go, read her essay. Was able to give her good feedback. I don't really know you as a person here, so what did I glean from this? Did this person answer the prompt? That kind of stuff. If you look down here, another essay that's required, like here's one for Princeton. If you want, get into their engineering program, that's on there. Other parts that are required are what I mentioned early, supplemental materials. Some of those supplemental materials that you'll have to add to your application are essays, but other ones are interviews. Sometimes that's with an alumni will come into town, like a student that interviewed the Stanford alumni. Sometimes they are portfolios that you submit, research papers.
UT does interview, get on down more of the selective process. So even some of the public schools will for those more competitive scholarships.
Yeah, so that's not gonna vary depending on which school you're gonna go to. Like if you do a Common App with all these different schools, they'll each have different supplementary materials that they'll want from you. So this is where that you really set yourself apart. Your extracurricular activities. What are you spending your time at Spring Hill High School? How are you impacting Spring Hill High School so that when you're no longer walking through these halls, you are missed? So when you do your extracurricular activities, any of those from the list are awesome, and you can put them down there. What you don't want to do on your college applications is put just the same old thing. Well, I was in student council, and I was in National Honor Society, and I was in Key Club, and I was in the band, and all these things, and that's good. That's really good stuff. But hey, what if you could highlight yourself that shows how you're different than all of those other kids that are applying to these schools, and all, like, what is different about you? How do you spend your time? So that's really, if there's one part that can set yourself apart and make of your application that will make the difference, it's gonna be these extracurricular activities.
Okay, yeah, I know if I talk, when I'm talking to Mike, it's not picking up. Okay, I'm gonna just briefly touch on a couple of these with some more just examples that we had maybe from those students that were successful in getting into those more selective schools or getting those more competitive scholarships at state schools. But as she was saying, it's great, like doing all those things, but more importantly, even if you have one thing and you do it with passion and have a purpose, that is so much better than that student that has a laundry list of things and they were here and there and did a whole lot of things, but really didn't make it a solid impact on one. So do what you're passionate about. If you don't know, that's where hopefully now you have enough time to kind of explore that and find that and then really hone in on that. So, and some of those opportunities can come through your classes. So one of my students that went to Johns Hopkins, she was very involved in HOSA, which is our health science organization. So students in the health sciences class can join that, but also many of those programs through, for example, Skills, that's all part of Skills USA. Some of those you don't even have to take a health science class to be in HOSA. Most students do, and as you go on, become officers and things like that, you will. But so students get involved in those student organizations, whether it's something through the engineering or health science. So anyway, she ended up, I think that is what ended up setting her apart, truly, and allowed her to get, it was almost full tuition at Johns Hopkins and to get accepted in there. Yeah, she was state leadership through that and really into the officers, which all of that, it kind of, you develop that over time. And with that, you develop so many skills. I've been a judge for FCCLA for their competitions at the local level. And I mean, the amount, as a parent, if you've seen anything that your students doing, especially the juniors that are in the room, if they're involved in one of those, the amount of work that they put into those is absolutely impressive. And amount of organizational skills, leadership skills that they're developing. So it's not only having that title, but all the experience that they gain and how they were able to work with their peers. How are they able to work with somebody in a group that isn't showing up to do their part, right? Because that's what those colleges want to know about and actually have real examples to pull from. So a lot of those things you can kind of show yourself through in your essays through those experiences. But if you're not doing a lot, having those experiences, it's hard to show that. So, that's okay. I was going to try to move through them so we have time for questions. Okay. So another student. This was actually from speaking with an admissions, one of the admissions reps that I had reviewed the applicant at one of the more selective schools that we had. what stood out about that student was actually something that was like their personal like hobbies and interests. YouTube channel that they had created and developed, and you could see over time all of their different, it was student like super sharp in math, science, like physics, all of those more academic things. But then the YouTube channel was all like music and video creation and all these other more creative side, totally different side. That's what stood out, and that's really what set that student apart. And it was something just totally did for fun, but really that's, you know, they were spending their time, and you can tell the development over time and really get a view of who that student was, so.
Yeah, and so don't discount your hobbies and your passions just because you don't have a school club that it's on. Those things, that the student put that on the very top of their activities list. Has nothing to do with all the other activities that they did in high school. So don't discount that. If you love knitting, you know, how can you turn that passion into something that, you know, you can explain later and go, why you spend your time, and it shows just who you are as an individual to that college.
Okay, also summer activities. So we've got a big list on here about getting jobs, starting business, internships, job shadows. With those also, you get the college visit days, but also job shadows, so you can start that. If, you know, especially if your parents have a connection, that's great. Sometimes you can always ask us, like I know if I know somebody, I'll reach out and say, hey, you know, can somebody come job shadowing? So let people know you're interested in doing those things. Take advantage of that. There's also list on your girls and boys state is spring of junior year, and that is more of a leadership. It's in the summer. It's a leadership and experience. Government.
Debating, speaking, electing.
Yeah, that's the type of activities that students do there. So you have an opportunity to interview and be selected for that. But Tennessee Governor School, so right now, if you're in 10th or 11th grade, go home, that's kind of on your list, and you should have seen that on the Scholars teams to posted to check out the governor schools, and then let us know if you're planning on applying. Let your teachers know if they have time to write recommendations. But there's a lot of different opportunities to see if you are interested in an area. Everything from like sciences and engineering. I had students do one that was like archaeology, and they went on to digs. Arts was a huge one. And most of those are where you'll go to the college campus, and it's like about 4 or 5 weeks in the summer. You'll stay on campus, you'll get college credit hours, and really get that experience and develop those connections with other students. Also, there's like some for ag, like more veterinary sciences, but there's about 12 different options, I want to say. Also, I mentioned making sure that you do put in your email on those websites if you're interested in those schools, because they will have summer programs, and a lot of them have programs that they may not even push the information out to us, and if it's too many to even push out to you, because it's like each college might have their own summer program. Like my student that went to MIT, they had participated in a summer program the summer prior, so it was after they did governor school 10th grade year, and then they went to Mike's junior the summer after junior year, and so that was like the summer camp for the MIT students. That's where the student really fell in love with and had a sense of community with these other students, and that also helped and set her apart when applying, because there it's like 4% acceptance rate. They also did, in that situation, I know they did fly in, so the student could come visit. So there's some of those different things. And I believe that student got turned on to that through one of those seminars that was like, hey, Mom, will you take me to this? It's going on at, it was, just some random location that offered to host it, where they had the reps from
MIT and then a couple other schools. And so that's kind of how they kind of started to seek out and get all that information from them. So, so if you have certain schools, especially more selective ones you're interested in, go ahead and make sure you're on those lists and look into the summer programs. I know like Alabama has a ton of them. Some of those do have costs associated with them. And if you have, so that's the part that gets a little challenging. If you do have, there are some though that will have financial assistance, or that you can apply for, like the governor's school. That's a lot of times are free, with the exception of art. I think now doing partial scholarships. So, okay. Any questions about that or summer programs?
So don't say, some of I have to work all summer, There's students in that situation as well, and that's okay. That's a good thing. You put on your activity that, I work 40 hours a week, I work 30 hours a week, or whatever. That's a good thing. They like to see that because they know all the things that you're developing as far as your ethic and your character. All right. Last activity I was going to mention briefly is this not on, because it didn't sound like it was on. Okay, independent research. So this is something that it's independent. You do it on your own. You make it up, right? It's like you're going to start a business, or you're like, I'm interested in a topic and I'm going to research about it. Well, I had a student a few years ago, and he asked Dr. Dodson, hey, he's interested in astrophysics, and they did a bunch of measurements of something in the sky over a process of a year. I have no idea what it was, but something to do with astrophysics. And through that, and searching for college, he really kind of came, because he was doing that because he was interested in it, but he was looking at, those big astrophysics programs, Princeton, Northwestern, things like that. And he was planning on applying to those schools. And through his search process and visiting, he went to UAH. And he learned a lot about, that's the second largest research park in the world, right here, 1 hour from us. He learned about their program. He just thought this was just amazing. He's like, he told me, I can get him, he could get into one of those schools, no problem. This is the type of kid he was, but I'm just gonna be one of all these little walking brains. I mean, am I gonna get to do research? Am I gonna get to do hands-on stuff? Am I gonna get to walk across the street with a NASA scientist? No, but I can do that at UAH, and that's what made that decision for him. So independent research is just another cool activity because it just shows that you are very interested in learning and developing your mind. All right, and then the last activity I wanted to kind of talk about was fine arts, right? Gifted musicians, singers. We had a student recently that submitted some of her supplemental material was her singing and her music portfolio. And she applied to multiple schools, and she was actually in the running for the Haslam Scholars, which is a pretty prestigious scholarship through the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, where they pick 20 finalists, and then they award 10, and it's full rides, everything's covered. And she was in the running, and waiting to hear back from that, had pretty much decided she was going to go there, was getting her housing, and she got a call from Cincinnati, said, hey, you want to come here, we'll pay for everything, full ride, based on that, just her doing that. They said, can you just come and audition for us one more time? And she went down there, they up there, saw the school, and she's in Cincinnati, so it's just kind of a whirlwind. And this was like right toward the end of her senior year.